Look closely at the world around you, and you will notice a bizarre, cross-cultural phenomenon. Across every continent, under wildly different political regimes, and within completely separate cultures, millions of human beings wake up at the exact same hour, travel along the same paved pathways, sit inside identical cubicles or standing bays for exactly 8 hours, and return home to repeat the sequence every week. We treat this specific temporal architecture as though it were a fundamental law of physics, an immutable characteristic of human civilization like gravity or the rotation of the Earth. But it is not. The 40-hour workweek is a historically recent, highly artificial construct. More importantly, it is no longer just a metric for labor output. It has evolved into the most sophisticated, pervasive, and effective tool for psychological and social control ever engineered by modern industrial society. To understand how this temporal prison was constructed, we must first shatter the myth that human beings have always worked this way. For the vast majority of our species' existence, time was not a commodity to be bought, sold, and chopped into uniform pieces. In pre-industrial societies, labor was structured around what historians call task orientation. A cobbler worked until the pair of shoes was finished. A farmer worked intensely during the harvest, but spent long winter months in relative leisure. Time was measured by the natural rhythms of the earth, the rising of the sun, the turning of the tides, the changing of the seasons. There was no concept of a generic hour divorced from the activity filling it. Labor was deeply integrated into communal life, interspersed with long periods of rest, festival, and spontaneous socialization. The idea that a human being should sell chunks of their lifespan to an external master, regardless of the task at hand, would have been viewed by our ancestors not as industriousness, but as a form of unnatural madness. Everything changed with the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. The introduction of expensive, heavy machinery required human bodies to be synchronized with the unyielding, tireless momentum of steam engines. The factory owners quickly realized that their greatest obstacle was not technology, but human nature itself. Workers accustomed to task-oriented independence routinely skipped work on Mondays, took long breaks, and refused to view their lives through the lens of abstract clock time. To break this resistance, the early industrial capitalists engineered an entirely new social discipline. They erected massive clocks over factory gates, institutionalized severe fines for tardiness, and utilized church pulpits to preach that laziness was a mortal sin, while punctuality was a direct path to salvation. Time was successfully separated from human activity and transformed into a currency. For the first time in history, workers did not sell the products of their labor. They sold their actual lives, measured in hours, to the ticking of a machine. Men, women, and children were routinely forced to labor 14, 16, or 18 hours a day, 6 days a week, in horrific conditions. Out of this desperation, the modern labor movement was born. For decades, workers bled, protested, and went to the gallows fighting for a simple, elegant counter-demand, the 8-hour day. The slogan was radical in its simplicity: 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, and 8 hours for what we will. When this demand was finally codified into global law throughout the early 20th century, it was celebrated as an absolute, historic triumph for human freedom over the tyranny of capital. But capital is an incredibly adaptive organism. What appeared to be a monumental victory for the working class was quickly co-opted, re-engineered, and transformed into a permanent psychological anchor designed to stabilize the capitalist hierarchy forever. The true architect of this modern temporal trap was not a politician or a labor organizer, but an industrial monopolist, Henry Ford. In 1926, Ford made headlines by unilaterally instituting a 5-day, 40-hour workweek across his automotive factories, without reducing his workers' pay. The public and the press lauded him as a utopian humanitarian, a benevolent visionary who genuinely cared for the well-being of the proletariat. But Ford was no altruist. He was a brilliant, cold-blooded social engineer. He recognized a profound structural flaw in the rapidly expanding industrial economy. His automated assembly lines were capable of producing thousands of identical consumer goods at unprecedented speeds. But who was going to buy them? The working class, exhausted by 70-hour weeks and earning subsistence wages, had neither the money to purchase automobiles nor the leisure time to use them. Ford understood that for mass production to succeed, society required an equally robust system of mass consumption. By limiting the work week to 40 hours and maintaining wages, Ford did not liberate his workers. He successfully engineered the modern consumer worker. He realized that a human being who is kept in a state of moderate, predictable exhaustion will naturally look to purchase convenience, comfort, and social status. The extra 16 hours of weekly leisure time Ford granted his workers were not intended for intellectual cultivation, political organizing, or self-sufficiency. They were designed to be an economic vacuum, a designated space where workers could spend their wages on the very products they spent their days assembling. The 40-hour week became the perfect closed-loop pipeline, ensuring that wealth flowed continuously from the factory floor into the worker's pocket and straight back into the corporate treasury. As the 20th century progressed, this industrial template was exported across the entire globe, becoming the baseline organizational structure for the modern white-collar and corporate worlds. Yet, an extraordinary paradox emerged. Throughout the latter half of the century, computing power exploded, automation revolutionized logistics, and global productivity soared by hundreds of %. By all objective economic metrics, the amount of human labor required to maintain a high standard of living had plummeted. In 1930, the legendary economist John Maynard Keynes looked at these technological trajectories and confidently predicted that by the turn of the 21st century, society would transition to a 15-hour workweek. He believed that our primary psychological crisis would not be poverty, but how to manage an abundance of free time. Why did Keynes' prophecy fail so spectacularly? Why, despite living in an era of unprecedented technological abundance, are billions of people still chained to the exact same 40-hour baseline established a century ago? The answer is simple. The preservation of the 40-hour week is not an economic necessity. It is a political imperative. If the work week had been allowed to shrink in proportion to our productivity gains, the average human being would today possess a dangerous amount of free time. Free time is an inherently destabilizing force to an entrenched oligarchy. When people have surplus time, they read, they reflect, they communicate, and they organize. They begin to look critically at their political institutions, their environmental degradation, and the systemic inequalities surrounding them. By maintaining the 40-hour week as an artificial ceiling, the ruling corporate class ensures that the global population remains too cognitively depleted to ever mount an effective challenge to the status quo. The genius of the 40-hour system lies in its ability to enforce a state of perpetual systemic dependence through the mechanics of financial lock-in. Consider the daily survival loop of the modern 40-hour employee. Because 40 hours of your week are surrendered to an employer, not including the uncompensated hours spent commuting, preparing, and decompressing, you are left with a severe deficit of time for basic life maintenance. You do not have the time to grow your own food, cook nutritious meals from scratch, repair your own home, or deeply care for your own children or aging parents. Consequently, an entire multi-trillion-dollar secondary economy has been constructed to sell you back the self-sufficiency you lost. You buy fast food because you are too tired to cook. You purchase expensive convenience apps because your time is heavily restricted. You pay commercial childcare centers to raise your children while you work to earn the money to pay them. This structural scarcity of time forces you into absolute reliance on the corporate grid. It creates an inescapable financial equilibrium where your income is continuously drained by the very costs incurred by the lifestyle of working 40 hours. You become trapped in what sociologists call the work and spend cycle. To escape this cycle, you would need surplus time to retrain, to experiment with entrepreneurial ventures, or to build alternative networks of mutual aid. But the 40-hour week explicitly deprives you of that exact surplus. It consumes your prime cognitive hours, leaving you with just enough residual energy on weekends to engage in passive, commercialized entertainment and recovery, preparing your body to repeat the cycle all over again on Monday morning. It is a brilliant form of soft incarceration. The prison bars are made of clock ticks, and the inmate pays for their own cell through continuous consumption. Furthermore, the 40-hour week functions as an elite mechanism for suppressing labor mobility. By tying critical human survival needs, such as healthcare insurance in nations like the United States, retirement security, creditworthiness, and basic social respectability, to the standard 40-hour corporate contract, society ensures that alternative paths are heavily penalized. The individual who wishes to work 20 hours a day to pursue artistic creation, philosophical inquiry, or radical community building is marginalized as a societal failure, an eccentric, or a vagrant. The message broadcast by our global educational and economic institutions is unyielding. Your worth as a human organism is directly equal to your willingness to surrender 40 hours of your consciousness per week to the commercial machine. In the digital age, this apparatus of control has undergone its most terrifying evolution yet. The rise of smartphones, cloud computing, and permanent connectivity has completely dismantled the physical boundaries of the traditional workplace. The 40-hour week is no longer confined to a brick-and-mortar office or factory floor. It has dissolved into a borderless, permanent state of cognitive capture. Corporate communication platforms, project management apps, and endless email chains pursue the worker into their living room, their vacations, and their sleep cycles. We are witnessing the total financialization of human consciousness. The 40-hour week has expanded into a 24/7 psychological surveillance panopticon, where even our moments of leisure are algorithmicized, tracked, and monetized by the same corporate structures that dictate our labor. We must look past the clean corporate branding, the hollow human resource platitudes about work-life balance, and the internalized mythologies of hustle culture to see the 40-hour workweek for what it truly is. It is not an optimized peak of human civilization, nor is it a natural expression of economic reality. It is a brilliant, invisible matrix of social pacification. It is an intentional structural filter designed to keep you too tired to think deeply, too indebted to act independently, and too dependent on the corporate grid to ever dream of an alternative reality. The clock on your wall is not merely a tool for telling time. It is the silent, ticking rhythm of a global apparatus of control. And until we find a way to reclaim our temporal sovereignty, true human liberation will remain nothing more than a beautiful, distant luxury we simply do not have the time to achieve.